Alright, hi, here's some information about proofreading, which honestly is not that hard. The hardest thing is just having the time to do it, not procrastinating your essay so that you have time to actually go through it again, a second time, third time, fourth time, however many times it takes. So some overall tips: it's helpful to take some time away from your paper, so you don't want to write it all the night before, look it over real quick and then submit it. Because often what happens is that your brain, which is an amazing organ, knows what you wanted to say and it fixes it in your head. So you don't always notice the errors yourself, especially if you've been dealing with the paper a lot in a close period of time. So if you come back another day, the next day, reread it later, that's helpful. Have other people read it, obviously, is helpful because they have a different perspective. They'll notice things that you don't notice. And reading it out loud is a very helpful tool. You will 9 times out of 10 hear the mistakes when you read it out loud before your teacher has to point them out to you. It also helps to figure out who your reader is and your purpose for writing, so that as you read through it again, you make sure that you're answering the prompt, or you make sure that it's the right formality, or you have your audience in mind. Some people who like to read on paper, it's helpful to print it out to mark up anything you notice on that hard copy. Another tip that helps some people is to change the font or the size, because you've been looking at it in the same font and size, so sometimes just a different visual element helps you notice things. And make sure you're checking, first of all, your overall argument and your thesis, and then making sure that everything supports that. Your topic sentence tie back to it. Your body paragraph supports that topic sentence, which supports your thesis. Your conclusion explains why the thesis matters, why it all matters. Because otherwise, if you don't have a solid outline, you don't have good evidence, you haven't cited it, your thesis isn't solid, then fixing grammar mistakes doesn't really matter, because your paper's not very good to begin with. And then my last overall tip is to just take your time. It takes a couple of times reading something through. Maybe you have to read a sentence a few times to figure out if you think that it sounds wrong or not. You ask someone else to read it. So whenever you're writing, everything that you are doing is in a rough draft, starting from a blank page to right before you submit it, and even sometimes you submit to me rough drafts. It's not a final draft until it's all perfect. So until you make it all perfect, you're dealing with a rough draft. Alright, those are my overall tips. Let's see if I have any links for you. I do here. So some revision links, the step-by-step proofreading process, what to look for when you are proofreading. So a lot of these tips I already said. Get some distance from it. Decide what medium helps you, working on the computer or printing it out or doing something else. Change the look. Be able to focus. Okay. So you start by checking your content, making sure that you have answered the prompt. You have everything in the requirements for the assignment. The claims that you make are accurate and they can be supported. You have enough support, adequate evidence. The organization flows, it all sounds good together. Then you look at the overall structure. Do you introduce your topic well in the introduction, and do you conclude it well to say your takeaway for your reader, going beyond the what you talk about to the why it's important. Looking at your topic sentences and your so what sentences, making sure your paragraphs are in the right order. Then you would go down to the paragraph level. So looking at the structure within each paragraph, making sure that flows. And then you would go down to maybe the sentence level, making sure that you're clear with what you're saying. You have enough transitions. The words that you use make sense. The ideas that you use make sense. Your pronoun antecedent matches, stuff like that. Then you would look at your style. So you should be using a formal style going forward in this class. looking at the type of language and the diction that you're using. Make sure that you have used all your citations correctly in your works cited, in your in-text citations, your punctuation, and then you proofread for individual grammar, sentence, spelling issues. So you don't want to rely on just the spell check in Word, because typically you don't spell the word wrong. You have a correct word, it's just not the right word. So using the wrong your, like it's spelled right, but it's not the right word. Or using collage instead of college. You guys know who you are. So this is suggesting that you proofread for one kind of error at a time. I usually like to go through the whole thing once and then check it again for specific things, but I guess that's up to you. If you want to start by just checking that you have all complete sentences, no run-ins and fragments, that would be a good place to start. Reading it out loud, like I said, looking at each use of punctuation, all that kind of stuff. And if you want to check my grammar notes, they are linked in the agenda. Every day we do grammar. They're linked in modules under ongoing assignments, and they're linked in the ongoing notes, the Google Doc notes. So you can look through this to see if there's anything that you missed. So those are my biggest tips for you. We could look at example essays, but these have already been proofread. So they might still have other mistakes. Otherwise, you really just need to take the time and the space to go over your essay before you submit it to your teacher. So let me know if you have any questions about that. Otherwise, best of luck with your proofreading.